On today's show, Collin Sexton chatter and more with special guest Brad Sellers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
All right, the music you heard on the way in, at least in audio form, is from our friends at Astro Radio. Check them out on Apple Music or Spotify. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. I'm Chris Manning, covering the Cavs and the NBA for places like Diamond Up Rocks and Estimations for the Sword. My co-host is Evan Damrell, covering the Cavs and the Cleveland sports scene at large for Facebook's Right Down Euclid. Producer Jake Stevens is not with us behind the virtual glass, but he's here in spirit. The main focus today, our special guest, NBA veteran, Ohio native, mayor, the first mayor we've ever had on Locked On Cavs, the ultimate Cleveland Sports Show contributor, Brad Sellers. Brad, thanks so much for coming on.
Chris, Evan, glad to be here with you guys. Good morning.
Good morning. We were going to have Brad on regularly this year to do some hits with us. And again, you can catch him every week on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We're thrilled to have you, Brad. We're going to dive in first to Collin Sexton. And Evan and I have talked a lot about this. I think everyone in the Cavs sphere has talked about this ad nauseum. So when I say Collin Sexton, he's still a restricted free agent. He's still out there. What do you think is going on here?
Well, I think that obviously Collin is out here trying to assess his true value in this league and what people equate his value to as far as remuneration is concerned. Secondly, I think he's trying to figure out where his placement is on this team. Or if he isn't trying to figure it out, he should be trying to figure it out because the Cavs have put together a pretty good nucleus here and a good operation here. And I think there's a fit for Collin Sexton, but as any other player on any other team, everybody has a lane to run in, right? And it may not be the lane you want to be in, but this is maybe the lane on this particular team that I think is clear to me as being just a veteran of this league, what I think that his value is, because he has a lot of value. But it can only be accessed in a way that accentuates the other value of the other players on the team.
What do you say, like, finding his fit? Chris and I agree with you in that sentiment where the Cavs have really took a dramatic leap last year from just what we thought they were going to be to what they ended up being. And Collin unfortunately went down 11 games into the year, and he looked like he was trying to find his fit. But it just, in your eyes, just as an NBA vet and as two guys who didn't play basketball, you probably have better insight on this than you do, and than we do. Sorry. What do you think Collin's best fit for this Cavs team would be if he did come back?
Well, let's talk about Collin's strengths. Right. So his strengths are he's a competitor. I don't think there's anyone out here that say he doesn't compete. He's not a guy that does not and is not willing to compete nightly. So that's a plus. Second thing is his youth. That's another plus. The third thing mainly is what he does. He can score. He can flat out score the ball, right? And the situation he was in before, we were asking him to do a lot. He was scoring a lot. He was very active, and I don't think that anybody thinks that he wasn't a very dynamic scorer. The problem for Collin was his scoring didn't translate into victories. It just did not, right? And so when it does not translate into victories, then, everybody pulls out the pad and paper and starts checking you off like, okay, you're doing a lot of numbers. You give us a lot of numbers, but you're not, it's not translating into wins. So when he, unfortunately, his untimely injury, he goes down. And then what that does, as has happened on many times in this league before, someone goes down, it opens the door to other people, and then what happens in that action? The Cavs blossom to this phenomenal run last year that nobody saw coming, and now they say, hey, this guy's better than I thought. Garland gets better. Mobley is better than advertised, right? And then Kevin Love has an outstanding year, and then Marketing plays well, and Jared Allen plays well, and now we look like, wait a minute, hold on. Okoro gets a little better. Now we sit here, wait a minute, we got something different here. And now the strengths that Collin was used to doing, the Cavs had to be, and this is as a person that has been around this league, be looking like the Cavs or any other NBA team would be looking for, do I need all that from him or do I need just this? now which may be different than he's used to playing here in Cleveland, which is why I think Collin was asking for that sum of money that he was asking for. And the Cavaliers returned and said, nah, I'm not ready to do that yet because I only need you for this, and I'm willing to pay X for this and not the other. So I still think there's a place for Collin on his team. When I look at Colin Sexton, Chris, and Evan, you know what it reminds me of? I'm going back in your basketball history. There was a guy that played in Milwaukee when I was in the league in the 80s and 90s. Came off the bench for Milwaukee. His name was Ricky Pierce. Came out of Rice University. Ricky had a nickname, and this is when your peers give you the nickname, not your family, not your friends, when your peers give you the nickname, it means something. So Ricky's nickname in Milwaukee was Plenty Numbers. Plenty Numbers. And that meant, when you say plenty numbers to us, his job in Milwaukee was to come off the bench and just fill it up. We didn't ask Ricky to play defense, do anything else. Just come in and give me the point production that I need. And when you're doing that, Ricky played plenty of time. He wasn't a guy that played like 15 minutes a night. Ricky was playing 30 minutes a night, giving them massive numbers, went to, I believe, a couple All-Star games off the bench in the six-man role. And I think that's the role that the Cavaliers have a void in because our point production when we go to the sideline sometimes dwindles. Mm-hmm. I think there's a role for Colin Sexton here. I just really do think that's where it is.
I think it seems like what the Cavs clearly think, because even if we just look at it from a financial perspective, the number that is out there for him right now is 3 years, $40 million. That's reportedly what the Cavs have offered. That is in the vein of what Jordan Clarkson is getting from the Utah Jazz. Jordan Clarkson is a come off the bench, shoot it a bunch, run a little pick and roll, but he won Sixth Man of the Year 2 years ago now. Joe Ingles probably should have won it, but that's another conversation.
Right.
But that's what Clarkson is. He comes in, he shoots, he does Jordan Clarkson things. That kind of, even though we've seen Colin do other stuff, I think in a world where Darius Garland basically just got $200 million, where Evan Mobley is going to do more on offense, we have all this other stuff. I think you're right in saying this is kind of what we think the Cavs think of Colin. They can say differently. Maybe if he's back, he gets a chance to start at the two over a Karis LeVert or an Okoro or an Abaji, right? But it seems pretty clear that they kind of view him as a specific role, and I think saying we want to pay you to do this, not to do more, not to count more against our sheet. It just seems like where this headed, and I still can understand from Colin's perspective why you would feel not thrilled to maybe just go out of your way to take that contract right now.
And part of it is this, right? If you've been a starter all your life, you think coming off the bench is a demotion. Really, it's not a demotion. And we're playing in the pros. These are pieces to a puzzle. We're playing a chess game here. Everybody came to the pros as a starter. When I came to Chicago in '86 as the number 1 pick, number 9 selection overall, I was a guy that was given 22 and 13. I'd start every game. Here's the deal. This is what I give you. When I got to Chicago, I was like, well, I'm going to continue doing that. They were like, no, you're not. We don't need that from you. I was like, wait a minute. Hold on. You drafted me as number 1. No, we don't need that from you. I got this other guy over here, 23. He can do a lot. I don't need all that. I need some of these other things for you to do, right? Yeah. And that was that. And you look as a young player like, that's a demotion. What do you mean? It's not a demotion. It is an assessment of your skill set and taking the strengths of your skills and say, how can I implant those and embed those within the other guys and make this thing better that I have here? And in this game here, I just think that Colin's journey for us is better suited for that. And here, the thing about it, because let me just say this. If somebody else had a different assessment in this league, they would have put some money on the table. Mm-hmm. They didn't put any money on the table. So that means that there are other organizations thinking the same thing, like, wait a minute. And it doesn't make you big or bad. And the good thing is, if you take the role and play it up, you can still get paid. You still can, right?
So, Brad, my question for you, since Colin is a younger guy, and I agree that maybe it's a learning experience. Like, you have the power of hindsight now, but, like, when you were told that when you came to Chicago, like, if you're trying to maybe send a message to Colin, like, when did it kind of click for you and you realize, like, yeah, this is this is not a me sport, this is a we sport, and like you are a piece to this championship caliber squad or even a playoff caliber squad in Cleveland's sense. Like, what would be your message to Colin, just to kind of, I would say, swallow your pride a little bit, but it's part of growing up and learning how to going from being a kid to kind of being like a grown adult in this league.
Yeah, well, here, let me tell you something. You hit the nail right on the head. Because you want to know when I learned it? When I talked myself out of Chicago, I had them trade me to Seattle. And when I got off there playing in Seattle, and I was like, well, something is different here. Yeah. And I'm looking back, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I had this thing over here, right? Even when I got traded, Joe was like, you want to do what? You want to be traded? I'm like, yes, move me. I'm going to show you who I am, right? And what I did not know was I was already embedded in one of the best teams in the history of the NBA. I couldn't see it because you can't see it. Because you don't know enough to know what you don't know, right? And instead of looking at it like a demotion, I'm hopeful that somebody's in this. You're like, wait a minute, it's not a demotion, right? It really is not a demotion, right? It is we're taking your skill set here and using it the way that we need. Now here, it can also turn around. You take that role. Say somebody gets injured and goes down. He has to be reinserted into the starting lineup. You can still have your way. The thing is, you're trying to make sure you stay around here the longest, have the best opportunity to win. That's going to give you the most lucrative deal and career that you could have by being a valuable asset. And I would tell you, if there was another assessment out here, somebody would have laid the money on the table already.
Yes. All right. After the break, we're going to talk a little more about Colin Sexton. First, going to give us a word from a sponsor today, NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you lived your bite. You can make it home. It's no big deal. What are the odds you're going to get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst thing that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows the risks about driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, we're back here with Brad Sellers. Brad, let me ask you this. If Colin Sexton is staring at this mark right now, we're almost to September. Camp starts in a couple weeks. It doesn't seem like, as you've said, there's another team out there that's totally knocking out the doors to give him the money he wants right now, force the Cavs to either match it or let him walk. If you were in his shoes and thinking about this and saying, okay, I could take the qualifying offer for $7-something million and hit you and be an unrestricted free agent next summer, how would that, knowing that you're passing up some guaranteed money, but also really betting on yourself, how would you view that in a former player's shoes? How do you view that decision if you're Colin?
Well, first of all, I'm not stupid. I wouldn't be taking the guaranteed money, right? Because anything go wrong here, right? And many people have rolled the dice like with the bravado, like I'm gonna roll these dice. I'm gonna show you, and then have come up craps, right? So, first of all, rule number one: take the money, right, and then parlay that into something else. Right, it's only dreams deferred. That's all it is, right? It's just dreams deferred. Because if you say if you this big baller, right, come on in here and ball out, and you won't be the first person that had to prove themselves in this league to ball out, right? And then when you do, that's when you make them pay. Now you're gonna pay me. It's gonna cost you more this time. You could have got it for cheaper.
Do you think the fact that he is dealing with an injury, or coming off an injury as well, and like you said, the market's non-existent. We talked about this the other day, actually, where if there was like a sign and trade to materialize for Colin, it would have happened by now. If a teams aren't tripping over themselves to sign Colin Sexton. I think part of that's being a restricted free agent, of course, but like you said, and I think you and I were all in agreement that he should take the money. Maybe it's on a shorter contract so that he can, like you said, parlay this. But do you think the injury is playing a huge factor in this? Like, if he wasn't hurt, do you think there'd be a bigger market for him?
Potentially. One of the biggest things is when you come off injury, that's the first rule number one. I'm not giving you any money because you come off injury and I don't know. And so, so unless you really like this person, like you really had been on this person for a long time and was satisfied that to your satisfaction, that it was a thing that was a no-brainer to you. Well, we're almost in September here, Right? And this thing is still percolating below the scene. Doesn't mean that it's percolating behind the scenes. I don't know. A sign trade could be in the key, but I mean, I don't see it. Right? I just don't see it because the Cavs want value back. They want value. We're not just giving you away just because you want to leave, right? Because you don't like it, the situation, the terms of the deal. So they want value back. So they're not pressed to move and do a sign and trade unless they get something back that they want, right? So to me, I don't see where somebody's going to jump up and throw him $80 million. I just don't see it.
Fred, if you were the Cavs considering those, this is the last thing we'll hit on with Colin Sexton before we hit some bigger picture expectations.
Okay.
And this kind of is maybe a good transition question to that. How all in would you be looking on, let's say a Colin Sexton sign and trade presents itself from, let's say, like a Dallas or a Utah or some of these other teams that have had some possible interest in Sexton? How all in, how would you still be trying to look ahead with the pieces? Would you be prioritizing draft picks? Do you want pieces that are maybe just for next year, maybe the year after that? Like, if you're the Cavs, how are you looking at potentially handling some of that? Are you looking very much in the future? Are you focused on the right now?
Well, I think I'm looking towards the future, and I look at it like this, Chris. I've got I have some young thoroughbreds over here. I got a young thing that's set up to run for a while if I do it right. So I don't really want to impede that. Now, I know you talk about Dallas. There's nothing Dallas could give me that would interest me, unless you give me a Luka Doncic, maybe. I'll listen to that. Right?
I might do, if they're like, hey, Luka for Sexton, I might be picking up that phone call, putting in that fax. Yeah.
I listen to that, right? So if I go to Utah, Donovan Mitchell out there, but they want to extract some blood from you, right? And so that means that's going to devalue the rest of your crew, because you're not going to get Donovan Mitchell for cheap. It's just not, right? So I don't think we're in a position to do that, right? So you need a willing partner. My thing is here, Colin Sexton has a valuable role on his team. He can't see it right now. If I embed him in here, and then if I'm able to go out and get a veteran, I was telling some friends of mine, I need somebody I need to bolster my bench here, because remember when we got to the play-in, we couldn't score. We went to the sideline. It was null and void. It was like nothing's there, right? Nothing is there. And the people we had on the sideline, we were hoping and praying that they could give me something. So you need to bolster the bench. So if I put Sexton to the bench, that strengthens that group. I leave Love to the bench, solid there. Give me another player. I'm going to throw one more name at you, and people will be laughing at me when I say it. Go give me Melo. I don't need nothing from you, Melo. I just need you to shoot the ball. That's all I need. Because I got these young thoroughbreds in the first wave that can get it done. I need somebody to go to the sideline that people are going to respect their game enough. I just need you to give me some points. I don't need you to give me 30. Give me 12. Give me 13, right? That buys me time and rest for my starters to come back in here and do the load. And for Melo, you were closer to the end than the beginning. So let's lengthen out your time here, right? And I'm giving you less work, and you're gonna give me some things. You got a chance to win. You're not going to one of these awful teams. You're going to a team that's knocking on the door, right?
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. I never really considered Melo. I think as a basketball fan and someone who just enjoys watching him play, I think just seeing him in a Cavs jersey would be a little surreal at this point. But I like that. Right. I like that thought process. I think, like you said, he's at the end of his career. He could play meaningful basketball and maybe make the playoffs versus going back to the Lakers and having to deal with that situation. But we can talk about the Cavs a little bit more in the next segment. But Chris, why don't you give us another word from one of today's sponsors?
Yeah, I got to let everyone know that we're sponsored today by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting scores and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today, or in certain cases, months in advance. For example, the Cavs are 5-point underdogs in their season opener on the road in Toronto. The combined point total bet for that game is at 214. It's over 214 points at minus 110. They have win totals for the Cavs, which I believe they're at 44 right now. Is the over/under. That's BetOnline. That's where the game starts. All right, last segment of the day here with Brad Sellers. Again, you can check him on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show every week. You're going to hear him throughout the season on Locked On Cavs as well. Brad, you look at this Cavs team. We're heading into the 2022-23 season. Still a little bit is away, but training camp preseason's coming quick. What are your broad expectations for the Cavs?
Well, my expectations are that we take another step forward, not just a tiny step. I think that last year, if we had, but for the injuries down the stretch, I thought we were a team that people feared to play. And we played well in the play-in, and we just didn't have enough gas to get over the hump. I think if we do this right, because the Eastern Conference, to be clear, the Eastern Conference has gotten better. Mm-hmm. It's gotten better. And so you can't be messing around here. You got to be ready to go, and hopefully that these young players didn't get drunk on the success from last year, because now you're on the radar screen. Before you weren't on the radar screen. They're like, Cleveland come to town, and then next thing you know, you lose by 30 to Cleveland, right? And then it happens over series and series and series. Now you're on the radar screen, but now you're clearly on the horizon. We know exactly who you are. So to your mark to this Toronto game is an opening game, and we're opening as the underdog. Why is that? Because Toronto got young thoroughbreds up there. They're going to be ready to play. So you better meet that. So you better make sure that we're solid. Again, I think we need to solidify the roster a little more. I like the fact that the picks that we've done, I think I'm really looking forward to seeing Mobley's brother, because when I was watching them when they were at USC together, I was like, oh, this is unique. This is before I even knew the Cavs were going to draft. I was like, oh, that's unique. I hadn't seen that before. And so I think we got some flexibility here. Where our problem comes in is, and I'm going to keep going back to this. I want you guys to think back to this, Evan and Chris. When we got to that play-in down the stretch, you didn't know when it got tight, you didn't know who was going to score when they cut Darius Garland off. You didn't know who was going to do what. This is where players like Melo and them come in at, because they know what to do. They're not going to flinch in the moment. And sometimes young people need to be steadied by older people who have been there before. Like, listen, get ye behind me. We're going this way, right? And that's how a young team gets better.
We're really in agreement on that, because we noticed it, especially down the stretch. I think Darius Garland point blank said at one point, hey, a lot of us have never been here before, so like the pressure is just kind of showing cracks. And I think the Cavs, at least publicly saying, we're not feeling the pressure. We're going to try and go out there and have fun and just try and find themselves again. Like you said, now there's an expectation heading into the season. They're not going to catch teams off guard. They're not going to be surprised when the Cavs have 3 7-footers in their starting lineup or things like that as well. As a guy who's experienced success with the Bulls and you've had experience in the league, like, what would you tell these younger guys? Like, hey, don't get drunk off the success and make sure you stay humble and focused.
Well, I would say this, Evan, that you have to be aware that now you have become the hunted. You're not the hunter anymore. You're the hunted. And that's a different mindset. Yeah, I mean, when they're coming at you on a nightly basis, right, the expectation level rises. And what happens if you get off to a bad start, young team can crack because the pressure. That's why you need the release valves of people who have been there. I think all the successful teams I've been on, the veteran leadership has really led the way, right? They might not have been always the most talented, but the veteran leadership was always there to settle the younger players down, because to Darius's point, they had never been there. This is not, listen, it's one thing when I'm playing game 65 or 57 in the season up in Phoenix. What is that? When those playoff lights come on, it's different. The expectation level is different. And then the pressure is ratcheted up. And it's ratcheted up in such a way that it has made many people crumble. So it is about being having a team structured so well that the veteran leadership is there, right? It's a loose atmosphere to a degree, but when it's time to buckle down and be serious, it's usually the veterans that lead you say, no, we're not doing that, we're doing this, right? And so every successful team I've ever been on, that has always been the case. It was in Chicago. It was the leadership of Bill Cartwright and John Paxson and players like that have been around and kept Brad Sellers, Horace Grant, Scottie Pippen together, right? Like we're going into this thing, right? We already knew we had the number one ace in the hole, but that was him. He wasn't, Cartwright would take you under the ring like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing that, right? And so you would see the response I would be like this. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. I didn't know. Yeah. Glad you told me.
And I think Brad, if we look at what the Cavs did this offseason, maybe there's still a trade to be made or clearing a roster spot to move on from a Windler or an Osman, let's say, and Sexton, and we'll see what happens there. I think you can tell that this is what I think they share your assessment because, number one, they're bringing back Ricky Rubio. He may not play until we get to 2023, but they clearly prioritized what he provided from a locker room perspective and from a presence perspective. Kevin Love was as engaged as we've seen him since LeBron left last year and was a pretty impactful veteran on and off the court by all accounts. They went and got Robin Lopez, and they went and got Howell Nato to play backup point guard until Ricky Rubio comes back. And Nato was a guy that Antonio Lang, one of the assistant coaches, particularly loves. So I think they went and got vets, and I think there's maybe a need for one more. And it's like I know people can clown on it, but I find it kind of endearing that the Heat just like have Udonis Haslem around to be the adult. To say, hey, I'm the one who can call out Jimmy Butler when he needs it, right? Like that is a needed thing, seemingly. And the Cavs, I think, have a little bit with some of the guys they have, and I think with Bickerstaff being seemingly pretty connected to the group in a way that, let's say, some previous coaches that they had before Bickerstaff were not, it seems like a good setup, especially if, let's say, Darius in year 4 takes a leadership role. If Evan Mobley in year 2 can takes on more of a vocal presence. If there's some little things there, Jared Allen in his second full season with the Cavs.
Right.
If those young guys evolve into those roles as these older guys show them how to do it, that seems like a workable setup to me.
Well, you're straight in line with that, Chris. Let me just tell you. And you bring up Udonis Haslem in Miami, right? Do you see when Jimmy Butler was getting out of line last year on the sideline?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't sound like I'm gonna whoop your butt right here. Yes, I am. Right? You gotta have that. You gotta have that because you have to call spades and clubs and aces when you see them. Like this is not that. We're on something else here, right? And that holds everybody accountable. I don't care who you are. If you're the top dog or the last on the roster, everybody got to be held accountable to their thing, right? And when you're out of pocket, somebody's got to bring it. And only the veterans can do that. Because you're not going to get a young player. A young player not going to run up on an old timer. It's just not going to happen, right? And so that's what they're doing when they're bringing in these other players, right? The piece that they're missing. I like the Rubio pickup, right? We're going to see how this relates when he comes back off this ACL injury, right? But the piece, they're missing a piece, a veteran. When I say a veteran, I'm talking about an all-star, somebody that was there, somebody that had been in the trenches, right? It might not be an all-star anymore, but his knowledge, right? One that the young players are going to gravitate to because, like, I know him. I watched him grow up. I know he knows some stuff, right? And those are the ones that when you're on the plane, in the locker room, in the hotel, can hold court and curry favor from the others because the respect is given, right? The respect is given. Nothing against Robin Lopez and all them. Well, they know all stars.
Is that not Kevin Love?
Yeah, but here. So Kevin, I love Kevin's role, especially coming back last year, right? Mm-hmm. So you can have more than one Kevin Love. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. And I always feel like you need at least two.
Okay.
Right? Because he may only relate to a group. Then there's another person. When you hit a double-fisted, it's just better, right? Because it's not all on one person, right? And then you talk because sometimes you'll know in this game here, these young kids, you got to talk logic into these kids. Like they know is just go 100 miles an hour. Like, wait a minute, slow down. Yeah. We're not going 100 miles an hour here today. And then when we get to the parts of the season, when it gets tough, when I look at stretches of games, I don't look at them as the whole 82-game season. Sometimes I break it down in segments. All right, of these next 5, I got to win 3 out of these 5. I got to win 4 of these 5. So I have to know that this is important. Young player might not know that this is important. He may look at it like 1 of 82 games. No. we need 4 out of 5, but we're going to advance to the next level. But if you've never been to the next level, you don't know to break the season down like that.
Evan, any last thoughts?
Well, I am curious, Brad. Darius Garland is clearly the face of the franchise. The Cavs really paid him like that this offseason. But as a big man yourself, what do you see in Evan Mobley's potential? Because I'm more than bullish on it. I think it's sky high, but like the sky's the limit with that kid. Like you watch him in off-season workouts now, and those are off-season workouts. But you see the flashes even more so, and he could be the face of this franchise in the next few years, and could be like one of the best players in the league in no time at all.
Well, I love his upside. I love the cachet that he brings to the table. I think that the future is tremendously bright for Evan Mobley, and I just think that if we do it right and we groom him properly, because remember, he should still be in college, right? He should still be in college, learning, playing at the collegiate game. This should be his third year going into college, be a junior in college. So we've got some growth period here, but what you want to do is bring that along right. You don't want to rush the process. There's a process here. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, the pairing between Garland and Mobley is going to pay significant dividends for this franchise. And we do it. And I know it's going to happen because JB's going to do an excellent job. I played for JB's father in Seattle, Bernie. JB was a ball boy when I was a Sonic. And so he's been around, immersed in atmosphere with great teams and great players, understanding how it's together. So I'm not surprised that JB's having success at all. I'm just not. It comes from a family tree, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So I'm just going to say this: the thing we're looking for a major step out of Mobley, right? Last year was a surprise to many, right? This year you're on the 100 list. Now they're going to see, can you do it again? Now we're going to see if the work he's put in off season helps elevate him another step, right? Because ultimately, he's going to be the face of the franchise of this league. I think everybody out here sees it.
The upside is there. Darius Garland, all of this stuff is going to be a fascinating team to follow. Much more interesting now that they've leveled up. And Brad, as you said multiple times on the show, they are now being hunted instead of hunting and catching people off guard. No more showing up in a random city and teams not knowing what they're getting. The game plan is there now, and how they react will be interesting. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. This episode was produced by Jake Stevens, and a big thank you to Brad Sellers for coming on again. We're really excited to have him on the show this year a bunch. Also, again, check him out on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Brad, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Well, I just say this. Thank you guys for having me, and I'll just say I look forward to working with you guys throughout the year. It's going to be fun. I mean, look, we should be a playoff-bound team looking to be right in the mix here. So this is where we want to be. I don't like looking up from the bottom up. I like being looked from the top down.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They're like Cavs are 7th or 8th based on what Sportsbook elected in terms of odds. It's going to be a bloodbath East, very competitive, but if they're up for it, it shouldn't be up for a fun year. I will be back tomorrow on Thursday. Another episode. I'm going to talk to Antonio Daniels, Locked On NBA Insider, about some different Cavs upside questions, kind of building on this, and then diving into some upside questions about the Cavs. For your second listen today, go check out the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. You can check it on YouTube, and you can listen to wherever you're listening to Locked On Cavs right now, and then check out Locked On NBA after that. Until next time, I'm Chris. That's Evan. Thanks again to Brad Sellers for coming on, everyone. Be well.